All right. So this morning, Kanye West released a new album, and my friend Annie Mascola, who you guys may remember from, he's been on my channel a few times before, and he also has the podcast "People Are the Enemy," link down below. We had talked about when this album was going to be released that we might do some kind of a review, like a instant reaction, because we've both just listened to it. I mean, today it came out, so we wanted to get a fresh reaction, give our take on it, and see what the other one, what we each think of it, and so on, and just see where it goes. Yeah, Annie, welcome.
Thanks, buddy. Good to talk with you again.
Yeah,
Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is my thing.
yeah, you actually, you know what? We never talked about this, but you have you work for a blog, or you contribute to a blog that does music reviews, and I've actually never followed it because I don't really read music reviews. The thing is, I haven't really been following popular music. You follow popular music much more than me, so I'm more interested in your take on this album. But I'm going to link down below to your where you do music reviews, because that's something that I'm sure people would be interested in. But you also have your podcast, which will be down below.
I appreciate both those things. Thank you, pal.
All right, yeah. So let's get into this album. It's a very long album, right? I think we can both
Holy
agree.
moly! You know, I was talking like last week about finding a Stereolab CD that was 75 minutes long, and I thought that was long, but you know, when you invited me to do this, you said this new Kanye album is 105 minutes long. I was like, holy moly!
I think 108, but
holy moly! Well, still, my goodness.
But the thing is, though, there's a lot of like version two or part twos, but it seems like they're just alternate takes. They don't seem like they're different, right? They seem like they're just slight like alternate takes.
You're right. There's slight alterations. Yeah, I think some are more noticeable than others. I think on the Jail Part 2, Marilyn Manson shows up of all people. And I didn't know if you knew that. And then the baby is included, to the detriment of folks who are still upset regarding his what he was making news for a couple of weeks past.
What was he? I didn't follow that at all. So what did he make news for?
He'd made some homophobic comments on stage, and then when they tried to get him to apologize, he didn't really apologize. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. And then so what had happened was Kanye had these listening events. I don't know if you'd been following that, but he'd been doing these in Atlanta, first in Atlanta, and then most recently in Chicago. And on the initial song, I guess, which is called Jail, and he appears on the first version of it, Jail Part 1, as it's come to be known. Jay-Z has a verse, and of course people are excited because people love Jay-Z, and Jay-Z and Kanye had an amazing album with Watch the Throne, and so they were excited to hear them together again. But what had happened was the other night when Kanye performed the song, I guess near the end of the set, and its iteration Jail Part 2, he brought out two people, the baby and Marilyn Manson of all people, which was very bizarre. One because, and people were a little bit upset. One because the baby has courted controversy, as I mentioned in recent weeks, and as has Marilyn Manson, where he's been. You may not have heard about it so much because, obviously not as key a figure in popular culture in 2021 as he was, say, in 1999 or so. But still, he's courted controversy, if only because he's been brought up on sexual assault charges.
Yeah.
So people were like, "Whoa! Like, what's next? Is he going to bring out Bill Cosby? Like, what is going on?" It was very.
I saw that joke too.
So people were like thinking like, "Oh, well, he's replaced Jay-Z's verse on this song with the baby," and to the again, people were upset because people love Jay-Z and they love them together, etc. But as it turned out, as you mentioned, he included two different versions. There's the Jay-Z version up front, and then at the very back end of the album, Part 2. You wouldn't even know Marilyn Manson's there. You might not have even heard or noticed Marilyn Manson on the song because I think they sing simultaneously, he and Kanye sing like the chorus together, and it's barely noticeable unless you know he's there, at least for me. And then the baby has a verse on there that is more noticeable. But yeah, that was kind of a weird surprise to have Marilyn Manson on an album in 2021.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. But for me, I think it's more surprising just because this is such I would say like the last 3 albums Kanye have done have been like kind of Christian rap, right? Like,
well, yeah, you know what? I was thinking about it and going through the discography, and I realized like this is his 10th album. I haven't paid this close attention to a Kanye album since 2016, The Life of Pablo. I don't know if you remember that one. It was the one with the orange cover. Yeah. And when it came time to release it, I was like, oh, great. I look forward to going to the store and buying Kanye's new album. And no, I couldn't do that because he made it exclusively available only on Tidal, which was Jay-Z's streaming service at the time. Oh. And I ended up getting a bootleg copy off a guy that was selling them through Twitter of all places. And so I was like, well, screw this. I don't want to have to pay for a subscription to Jay-Z's streaming service Tidal. Instead I just went and I got a bootleg version of the album, which was for me initially great. And I thought, oh, good. Now I've got the album and I can put it on my phone. And then what happened was Kanye, and I don't know if you recall this, but in 2016, after the initial release of that album, he began changing things. Like there was no physical album out in the world. It was only available as a digital item, meaning it was only available streaming through Tidal. So it being a piece of art, he thought like, well, I can make changes now. And he started pulling out verses and putting in new verses and changing things on the album. So there are really like multiple versions of The Life of Pablo. It's kind of odd. I think it still hasn't got a proper physical release. And then there was Ye, the album Ye. Do you remember that was like a shorter album?
Yeah.
From not too long ago. And then in 2019, and that might have been 2018, and then 2019 was that Christian album that he did, the gospel album, Jesus is King. Yeah, 2018 was Ye. 2019 was that gospel album, Jesus is King. And I didn't pay attention to either of those. For no other reason than, I was really turned off for his support for you know who, and I was kind of like, I'm not going to pay attention to this person anymore.
The orange-skinned one, yeah.
But unlike yourself, I know you're able to do this, but I have a hard time separating the art from the artist. And when somebody does something crummy, I kind of like I begin to associate what they're doing artistically with it. And I know that if I had knowledge of every artist that I love and their personal life in as much detail as we have today, where we have like news 24 hours and their social media, so we can know what these celebrities are thinking, I probably wouldn't listen to like a quarter of the artists I love. You know what I mean? Yeah. But because there's platforms now where people can speak out and we have knowledge of their ideologies in some cases or their opinions, and when I get exposed to it or learn of something that's unattractive, it turns me off to their art. But that's just me.
Yeah. Let's get to the album though.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No. It's a lot of backstory that like. What I was trying to say though is that Life of Pablo for me was the last album that I would say I liked a lot from Kanye, and then Kids See Ghosts and Ye, those albums I listened to a few times. There were a few good songs, but I wasn't that into. I didn't really care. And then the 2 Jesus albums, I listened to a little, but they were just kind of boring to me. And there was this definite shift away from topics that he would talk about, and like I don't know the version. So I downloaded the version from Pirate Bay this morning. That's the version I sent you. And neither of us. I don't pay for albums in general. Like I don't care. Like, unless I really like an artist, then I'll like go to a concert or I'll buy a t-shirt or whatever to support them. But my default is don't pay. And then unless I really like them, then pay. But anyways, so what was I trying to say? Oh, so the Jesus albums, they just like he doesn't cuss, but the version I sent you, like, it seems like there were a few times they kind of cussed and they kind of like, it's like the parent safe version.
Yeah, I looked into that, Adam, and I think that was across the board. I don't think that was just your versions, because I noticed
I got that impression too. Yeah,
and in the when I went to Lyric Genius.com, where they have like, people put their thoughts in on, line by line. But, and I don't know if you noticed this, but the N-word is edited out of the entire album.
Yeah.
And every time the N-word is supposedly uttered in a song, it's asterisked out on every song in Genius, which always puts like the word. So I started doing some research and found out that, and I'm fairly certain that every platform that this album is available on, presently at least, there are no curse words, and the N-word is completely omitted. It's not even present. It's just blank
that's what I saw with the Jesus albums too. So I'm saying, like, I think this is just, all of this is part of his like plan to try and become president. He's trying to like get the Christian no, seriously, he's like trying to get the Christian audience to like say like, oh, I'm a new me. I'm cleaner. My topics, I'm not talking about like doing cocaine off hookers' butts or whatever he used to sing about. Like, it's just like, now it's just like every song is about Jesus pretty much, and like more or less. And it kind of gets a little boring to me. Like, it's just like, okay, what's the point? Same thing again. Like, okay.
It was certainly like initially, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised given exactly what you just mentioned, that the fact that, he put out a gospel record, and obviously that's his mindset at this point. But yeah, so many of the songs have Jesus in the title or God in the title, or some references to the Bible. And right. Even there's even like that Sunday choir that I guess he's been employing like at these Sunday services that he's been doing, and you can hear them all over the album too. And I don't know if I guess I thought like, oh, this will be a return to form. This will be like Kanye going back to Kanye. I understood it was like his mother's name is Donda, and I thought like, well, there's going to be a certain amount of respect put on this album, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess I should have known better and been aware that this was most likely going to be still in a similar vein, not too far a departure from what he's been doing the last couple of years with the gospel services and the
right.
And the gospel album. Yeah.
So what did you think of it overall, though? Did you like it, or did you? Well, I found it kind of bloated and boring.
It was long, and I did listen to it in different parts. I listened to a couple songs while I was making coffee, and then I said, okay, there we go. Those are those songs. And then I honestly like took a shower and I listened to a couple songs while I was getting dressed afterward. And then I listened to the bulk of the album with earbuds in, and with the Genius notes open in front of me, so I could try to get the references and pick up on things to talk with you about. In which I sent you the Genius notes, and you said, "There's no way in hell I'm reading those notes."
I only do that for albums I like. Like, I'm not going to research an album I don't even. Okay, so there were two songs I thought were pretty good: "Off the Grid" and "Pure Souls." I thought those were the two best songs on the whole album.
I agree with you on "Off the Grid." That was the first one that caught my ear, and I think, oddly enough, like I say, oddly enough, I guess not oddly enough, I'm a fan of Playboi Carti as eccentric as that rapper is, and I think he is eccentric comparatively. I don't know if you've heard any of his albums, but his style is very strange. And yeah, he appears on "Off the Grid," and then he appears on at least one other song on the album, and I like both of those songs. So I didn't think, I thought they were okay. And then there were things that I thought were pretty weird and kind of interesting to read about also. Like, I don't know if you picked up on Junya, Junya, where he's like, "Junior want to not be on my rib." Did you get that? And I was like, what is that?
What was that about then? Tell me.
Look it up. Yeah, it's about some like elusive Japanese fashion designer named Junya Watanabe. Or Watanabe, pardon me. But I'd never heard of this person. And I said, oh my goodness, this is, I think it's a lot like, and I know we talk about Momus a lot because you and I are fans of Momus, but every time I listen to a Momus album, I'm introduced to a lot of new cultural things that I'd had absolutely no reference to, either like really old things or things that just were happening in another part of the world over the last several years that I'd had no idea about, people in the art world, et cetera, et cetera. And I think similarly, especially with an album this huge and Kanye being the kind of person he is, there are going to be references that and people that are showing up on this album that I'd never heard of before. There are rappers I knew, there are rappers I didn't know. Lauryn Hill was on this album. I recognized her voice immediately, and I was like, holy crap, I didn't expect to hear Lauryn Hill, and that was a pleasant surprise. And then, like I said, like, you're introduced to things that I never knew about. I never knew about Junya Watanabe. So it's I guess it's kind of like that learning. And the other thing was Larry Hoover and Larry Hoover Jr. Did you get that part with the spoken word, where it was Larry Hoover Jr. thanking Kanye for going to the Oval Office,
right,
in order to try to, like, I had no idea about that story, and I ended up reading all about Larry Hoover Sr., who was a gang member who's been in prison since the 70s. That Kanye went from Chicago. Kanye went to with the intention, meeting with you know who, in order to try to get him to free him, which ultimately did not happen. But that. There's a sample on the album from Larry Hoover Jr., Larry Hoover's son, Sr.'s son, thanking Kanye essentially for doing his best to get him out. But again, this is something that I, even when all that was going on, and it was in the media, obviously in the news all the time, I'd had no idea that was his intention, and that's what he went to visit with you know who about.
Right. That was a song too, where there's two versions, so it's on there twice. And it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same. You know, it closes the album. It's called Jesus Lord.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like this album is just bloated. That's like, I would have called it bloated, not Donda, because his bloated ego is bloated. It's just too much. Like, there's like 2 or 3 songs that are good out of 108 minutes.
It's definitely a lot, Adam. And I think, had I not had notes in front of me, I might have been watching the clock. You know what I mean? I think the fact that, again, where I could reference things, and if, again, going through with Genius, you can kind of like tap a line and it'll bring up a little explanation of why that lyric was important, or what it's a reference to. And there were some esoteric things for sure, like whether it was like somebody's tattoo or Elon Musk reference or something like that, and that I wouldn't have picked up on otherwise. And that, of course, made the listening experience more interesting. But I think you're right. Had I not had that there, I don't know how long I would listen to this album, say if I was driving a car, or if I was at the gym, or even just out for a walk. I might only listen to like a quarter of it or half of it, because there is so much.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
I think my favorite Kanye albums, like I like Life of Pablo a lot. I like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, because they have like so much energy, and they just feel so much more raw and authentic. This just feels so kind of saccharine and just boring. It's just,
your point is well made. Your point is well made. I kept really, really wanting him to break out. There were moments I saw, like clips from that Chicago performance, where it looked like he was really digging in and getting really energetic, and really, it looked like it was a really visceral experience, and he was giving it everything he had. And I thought, like, well, certainly there's going to be these moments on this album. And there really wasn't. There wasn't a whole lot of dynamic moments where he kind of just, went off the chain and really gave it everything he has, which you've heard obviously on like The Life of Pablo. And there were moments, obviously more than a few moments, on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, where he was just emphatic and energetic. And that made the songs that much more compelling. And there weren't many moments at all on this that stand, especially none that stand out. Although I will say, yeah, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to mention that I think I wrote down "Come to Life." That song, I thought his vocals were pretty good. Like, I thought that it had some of his best singing, and I'll probably listen to that again a few times, and maybe Off the Grid a few times. But the rest of the album, I seriously doubt I'll ever listen to again.
Yeah, I'll tell you, in all honesty, I agree. I'd say that his parts in the albums were my favorite parts. Like, there were obviously features from these other rappers, and I'd say in certain situations on other albums, like I remember like Nicki Minaj's like verse on Monster. At that time, it was like the best thing I'd ever heard her do, and I still kind of have a hard time comparing that verse to anything else that she's done that I've heard that was that energetic and that dynamic and that exciting to listen to. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, she was kind of at her best, like from around 08 to 011 or so. Like, so that was like him and her on that album, like together on that song that was a great song. it was just so much more exciting energy. The featured artists on this album, like the Jay-Z one, it didn't feel like they were interacting at all. It just felt like, recording in their own studios and send it to email it to me and then we'll put it on the. It just felt like that kind of a feat or feature.
You're probably right. The one good thing, if anything, of the Jay-Z verse that I enjoyed was that I think he said the lines, "Stop all that red cap, we going home." I don't know if you picked up on that, but I guess it was a reference to the MAGA hats, and meaning like, Kanye, take off the MAGA hat, we're coming back to what you were before. And I thought, oh, that's a good sign of things to come on this album, to hear that as the second song, that line from Jay-Z on the second song, and that Kanye was okay with including that, and assuming that he's moved on from that part of his life, whatever the hell that was. But again, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot. Like, Kanye's parts essentially were probably the bulk of my favorite parts of the album. And I don't know if that's because he didn't want to be outshined by the features, meaning the other artists, but he's still a compelling personality and a compelling lyricist at times. But again, yeah, there was no energy. You wonder if he held back intentionally, because it was trying to be more solemn, or where again, with the whole God reference, or even the fact that the album is a dedication to his mother. He literally has his mother's voice on the album, doing spoken word in moments. So who knows the reasons why, man? But you hold out hope that he still got something left in the chamber to come back with, and or maybe not. 10 albums is that's pretty deep into a career. Yeah. I think about like David Bowie, like when did he start? Like in the late 60s, and they say like by 1980 that Scary Monsters album, people consider that like his last quote unquote great album until the last one, Black Star, which people really, really seem to take to. But there was a whole period there in the 80s where Bowie was not happening. He grew a mullet, and it was not cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it happens. And you always hope an artist will have a nice comeback, but I don't know, with Kanye, I don't know if it's going to happen. So I always keep an eye on him, and I always give it a try. Speaking of, like, we've talked about Ariel Pink before, and I don't know, he recently announced, I think he's announced an album like called The Dark. Have you heard about this? The Dark Side of Ariel Pink. So
I have not.
It's like another example, like Kanye. I'll check it out, but I mean, I don't know what to expect at this point. So
yeah, again, I'd have a hard time disassociating the ideology, given the happenings on January 6th and his participation.
You don't have to pay for it. I'll send you Ariel's album too if you want to do a review again. Because I'm curious about that.
I won't open my wallet for him. So yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, I don't have anything else to say about this album. Anything else you want to add?
All right. Well, this has been a good talk. I imagine I'll probably return to this album again, but I'll most likely do it piecemeal. Especially 105 minutes. Like, I can't imagine. Like, I was trying to figure out, like, if this does get a physical release, I think you'd need like 2, maybe 3 LPs. If you're going to put it on blacks, and then you'd certainly need at least 2 CDs, because I think CDs hold 78 minutes, something like that, or maybe 80 minutes. But yeah,
like
it'll be interesting to see. And what about one more thing, Adam? What about the cover art? I thought I'd seen some early conceptual artwork. One was like this kind of abstract painting, and of like red on gray, and then another was like this sort of, it looked like a manipulated photograph that had kind of like almost like fractal like light and rainbow kind of sunshines on it or something. Mm-hmm. And but when the album ultimately was delivered, it's just an all black cover. Is that going to stay, or do you think that he'll make a change?
I mean, it's so, like, you're so much better about getting physical copies. And for me, I'm like all about, I don't want to have anything if I can. Like, I'm trying to get rid of books. Like, I have like, the only books I'm trying to keep are my Crazy Cat books, because they're just like, they're big.
You love them.
I can't really put them on a ebook reader, so it's like, but I would get rid of them if I can. Like, to me, I don't want to own any crap. I don't want anything. I just want to, like, I don't want to pay for anything. I don't want to have anything. I just want to, like, when I want it, I want to be able to access it. But otherwise, I don't care.
Let me ask you this, just out of curiosity, because you are a music fan. Do you have favorite album cover art? even if it's just something you have in a digital format, like is there art that speaks to you that you say, because you love art, I know you're a creative person and you appreciate art. Do you have like favorite pieces like of album artwork?
Well, I mean, even just talking about the Kanye album, I made the thumbnail for this video already, and I included the one where there's like people floating towards the light or whatever.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about.
It's very Christian. Yeah. That's the Christian rap art album like icon. I think it's a pretty good cover. I like the look of it, but I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, especially like the 60s and 70s. There's so many iconic album covers. And when he had a big album, not that big, but when he had like, however big an LP is.
Or space. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many great albums from back then that just like, you talked about Bowie, all his 70s albums are amazing covers, very iconic.
Yeah, because he was a good looking person. I think that helped.
Well, it's interesting how he stopped appearing on his covers like around 2003 with Reality. He had the like the anime version of him, and then he just like, you can imagine like getting older, like he just didn't want to like show him getting older, especially once he had like cancer near the end. Obviously, then
I have never thought about this, Adam, but you're absolutely right. There was that 2016 album I think Tony Visconti produced called The Next Day, where it was the Heroes album cover, the one where his hands are kind of like this.
2013.
But it's all black. It's all like there's a big white board over his face and arms. And it just says David Bowie The Next Day.
Right.
And holy smokes, man, you got me to thinking. And this is one I saw Bowie on tour for when he came around to Boston, was Earthling, when he had this like Union Jack trench coat.
I remember that.
But his back is to the camera. Do you remember the cover of the album?
Yeah.
And I never put this together until we're talking about it right now. And even Heathen, like his eyes are whited out and he's really kind of like digitally enhanced on that cover, even though it's his face. But you're right. Yeah, there was a lot of, I think he used artistic opportunities to kind of not put himself in front of the lens, man. That's wild. I'd never considered that, but you're absolutely right. Very insightful, Adam.
As always. I understand though the appeal of like having a nice artifact, like what you're talking about, but I don't know. I just before I got a Kindle earlier this year, and before I had one, I was like, I don't like reading ebooks. Like I like having a physical book. Now that I have one though, I'm like, I hate real books. like I like being able to adjust the font size. So I like also like I can read in bed so much easier because I don't have like I'm still reading Mason and Dixon, which is like an 800-page book. Like I can't lie in bed holding this 800-page book the same way. It's just that. So like, I don't know, the older I get, the less I care about owning things like
material
objects.
Things.
Like,
I get it. I get it.
There's an appeal to it. I get it. I get that too. But Kanye, I'm not going to support Kanye. He's rich enough.
It'll be interesting to see if the album, like the content of the album changes in time, since it is only digital at this point, streaming, and digital, obviously the way you got it, but it'll also be interesting to see if that cover, which is again, at the time you and I had listened to it, it was completely black, if that changes at all, because that was what I found. The first thing I did was I looked it up on all the sites to see where the album was available when I saw that it was trending this morning on social media. And it was the same everywhere I went, just a completely blacked out album cover. So be interesting to see what he does and what he does next. And the other thing is, like, as much as we talk about him and as frustrating as he can be as a person, he knows how to promote the hell out of an album and build anticipation like nobody's business, because I didn't want to care. And I found myself caring and tuning in to see, like, what did he do last night? And what is, I don't know. So he knows how to market himself. I think it seems like there's a few people who do this really well. And I think Kanye is one of them. I think the French author Michel Houellebecq is one of them. Bret Easton Ellis is one of them. And even Morrissey is one of them, where they know how to, like, really kind of turn people off and push them away and then do something slightly cool that kind of brings people back to them. And they kind of keep this pushing and pulling in. And in that way, they kind of maintain relevancy, or at least seemingly so.
Well, I still, it's like I said, like I still esteem him as a musician. This felt like restraint, and I think he is still aiming for some kind of political office. So he's
you
aiming
might
for
be right.
Some Bible Belt audience or something. Because like this is an album you could give your kids. It's so boring and safe. It's just like,
yes, yeah, it is very safe. And the other thing that you mentioned, and I hadn't even considered that until again listening, and I wanted to read the notes, of course, about DaBaby's appearance on this album at the end of it. And it said something in the notes about how DaBaby was the only person who openly said he would vote for Kanye, and that's why Kanye felt a certain loyalty to him and included him on the album.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't know if that's true.
On Instagram. Like his manager was saying like he didn't want to release the rights. I don't know. There was something about that too. Yeah, I'd heard about that it was the rights were, he didn't sign off on his involvement in the album until later, and that's why he wasn't included on certain versions. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's still like I think in this day and age where there's so much music and everything is available all the time, you can literally download, an established artist's entire discography and listen to it. You can just stream it in without having to wait for the next album to come out or save up enough cash to purchase one. That it's hard to get people excited about music and new releases. And as frustrating as this person can be, he still knows how to market the hell out of an album. Like I said, I found myself caring and I didn't want to. And here we are talking about it, Yeah, I mean, he is an interesting character. I give him that. And yeah. I don't really have much more to say about him at this point. You mentioned you may be talking about him further on, maybe on writing about the review or on your podcast, People Are the Enemy. So I'm just telling that for the audience that I'm just trying to hook them in. Like, whether you do or not is up to you. Maybe you don't have anything else to add, but if you do,
I think
people need to check out your stuff, and it's down below.
We'll have to, you know what, Adam? We're going to have to keep an eye on things and see what happens in the coming days and weeks, and then as things do change, you and I should meet up again and discuss the further developments regarding this album, because I don't think, like with The Life of Pablo, I think about how many changes happened after that thing had come out. Yeah. That maybe the story isn't done yet. Maybe there's more to say. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm much more excited. Have you heard that Kendrick Lamar has an album coming finally?
Yes, I heard he's going to put out his last album for TDE.
I'm much more excited about that album. Like I'm eager to hear that. So I don't know. Has a date? I don't think a date's been announced yet. But
no, I haven't heard anything other than I think it was more to announce probably that he's leaving the contract with Top Dog Entertainment for whatever he does next. But I'd heard, and I haven't been following that label very closely. I'm not a huge hip hop person, but I understand that like that label has had great success in part because of Kendrick Lamar, and many of their more recent releases haven't been up to snuff for hip hop fans. And the fact that he's kind of announced that this is going to be my last album for TDE and then I'm moving on kind of might signal that it's he'll change his entire stuff. I don't know, who knows what he'll do. If he signs to like a huge label and he has a much bigger budget, maybe he'll do something much more bombastic. Who knows? I know you can't go wrong, but he's phenomenal. To Pimp a Butterfly is amazing. That's a great album for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know a lot more about pop music than me. I haven't been following pop music for like 5 years. When I started playing piano, I kind of tuned out. So people need to tune in if they're interested in popular music. So I should look into this. But what do you write about usually on when you do music reviews?
For Surviving the Golden Age, yeah, I do. I've been doing album reviews for them since 2015. I've done some show reviews, which have been fun. I've got to go to Wilco's Solid Sound Festival, which takes place in South Adams, Massachusetts every other year and features a lot of artists from the past and the present. I've gotten to see some great acts because of that and write about it. including Wilco. And I'm not a huge Wilco fan, but I've learned to really respect that band, and their fans are wonderful, wonderful people. And the other thing I've been able to do through Surviving the Golden Age is interview some of my heroes. I got to speak to Jamie Stewart of Shoo Shoo, who I love. I got to do, not to speak to him personally, but I got to talk to him via email and get a bunch of questions answered. I did the same thing for Calvin Johnson from K Records, and more recently the Expats, which was a fun experience. So yeah, it's offered me some opportunities for sure. That blog has been good to me, and it's been going a long time. From shout out to Adam Morgan. Thank you.
Another Adam. All right.
Another Adam. Yeah. I'm always concerned when I'm sending emails that I'm going to send it to the wrong person. But yeah, normally I do album reviews for them. I do 2 a month usually.
Awesome. Well, I'm always interested in hearing about music. I think we're good on this review. We've said all that I want to say, anyways.
Thank you so much for thinking of me, Adam, and including me. This was a lot of fun.
Maybe we can do it again with Ariel or Kendrick or somebody in the future.
I'd love to talk about music with you, about regardless of the artist, whether somebody I no longer necessarily listen to or pay attention to, or somebody that I'm passionate about. Absolutely, I could do either way. And someday, wouldn't it be great if we got somebody that we both love, hint hint, on your show, and interviewed that person simultaneously, not to mention anyone.
Okay, I can see where you're going. All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and hopefully we'll get this published tonight. All right, thanks, man.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Adam.